Welcome to Learning with UNP. In this session of Python for Data Science, we are going to understand about functions and pass statement. That includes introduction to function, examples of functions, introduction to pass statement, use cases of pass statement, and finally examples of pass statement. Let's begin with understanding functions. Functions are reusable blocks of code that perform a specific task. They help in organizing code, improving reusability, and enhancing readability. Python function is a block of code that runs only when it is called. You can pass values in functions called parameters. Thus, functions can accept parameters as inputs and return values as outputs by manipulating the given input. Function allows you to modularize your code and make it more organized and reusable. Here is the basic syntax of a function in Python. Def function name, which has parameter 1, parameter 2, and so on. Include the function body, include code block to be executed, and finally return value. Now let's break down the components function syntax. Def is also called as def. It is the keyword used to define a function in Python. Function name. It is the name of the function which should follow the rules for valid variable names. Choose a descriptive name that reflects the purpose of the function. Parameter 1, 2, and so on. These are optional parameters that the function can accept. Parameters allow you to pass values into the function when it is called. You can define 0 or more parameters separated by commas. Function body. It is indented under the function definition line and contains the code to be executed when the function is called. This code block can include any valid Python statements. Return value. This is an optional statement that specifies the value to be returned by the function. If present, it ends the function's execution and returns the specified value. If omitted, the function returns none by default. Now, let's look at the pseudocode representation of it. Step 1. Use the def keyword followed by the function name and parenthesis. Means start a function definition with def followed by the function name and parenthesis. Step 2. Inside the parenthesis, specify any parameters that the function should accept. Means inside the parenthesis, list any parameters that the function should take. Step 3. Write the function body containing the code to be executed when the function is called. Means write the function's code block containing the action it performs. Step 4. Include a return statement to specify the values to be returned by the function. Means optionally use a return statement to send back a value from the function. Step 5. Call the function by using its name followed by parentheses, passing any required arguments if applicable. Means to use the function, simply call it by its name followed by parentheses, supplying any required arguments. Here is an example demonstrating the basic syntax of a function. Define a function named greet using def, which take one parameter name. Inside the function, create a message by concatenating hello, the name, parameter, and exclamatory mark. Print the message. Use the return statement to send back the length of the name parameter. Call the greet function with the argument John and store the returned value in the variable length. Now print the length of the name stored in the length. The output after executing this is hello John, which is the message, and the length of the name is 4. The same is explained here too. Here, the most important point to be remembered is when defining a function, it only defines the function's behavior. It's like you're describing what the function should do when called. To actually execute the code inside the function, you need to call the function by using its name, followed by parentheses and passing any required arguments or provide any necessary inputs. This triggers the execution of the code inside the function, carrying out the actions you have defined. Functions have different variations, such as functions without parameters or functions that don't return a value. It's like those that don't need any inputs or ones that don't give back any results. Despite these differences, the fundamental structure or the basic syntax remains consistent or same, such as you declare the function with its name and possible parameters, and inside you define what actions it should take. But the parameters and the presence of the written statement may vary depending on the specific use case. Here are few examples demonstrating functions with different variations. In the first example, this shows a basic function without parameters. The function greet is defined using def. It does not take any parameters. Inside the function, it prints hello everyone when called. To use a function, we simply call it by the name greet. Let's execute and check. When we simply call this function by name greet, the output is hello everyone. That is the message. Now let's move on to second example. Second example shows a function with parameters and a return value. This function add numbers takes two parameters num1 and num2. Inside the function, it calculates the sum of num1 and num2 and stores it in sum result. Then it uses the return statement to send back the result of the addition. When calling function with add numbers 15 When we call the function with add numbers of 5 and 13, it returns the sum of 5 and 13, which should be 18. The returned value from add numbers of 5 and 13 is stored in variable result. And when we execute the print statement, it prints the sum of 5 and 13 followed by the value, that is 18. Let's execute and check the output. As we discussed, the output is sum followed by the value 18. Now, let's move on to understanding pass statements in function. The pass statement in Python is a null operation. It does nothing when executed. It is used as a placeholder in situations where a statement is syntactically required but no code needs to be executed. Pass statement is used as a placeholder for future code. When the pass statement is executed, nothing happens, but you avoid getting an error when empty code is not allowed. This can be particularly useful in functions, classes, loops, or conditionals when you are still working on your code and need to implement the logic later. Let me brief you about when to use pass in functions. We can use it for defining empty functions. When you need to define a function that you plan to implement later or that you plan to fill it in later with actual code. Second one is temporary placeholders. When you are writing the structure of your code and need a placeholder to avoid syntax errors in the code. Stubbing out code. It's handy when you want to create a minimal structure for future development or expansion, serving as a starting point. Here is the basic syntax of it. Def function name with the parameters parameter 1, 2, so on. Include the function body. Include the code block to be executed. And pass, which is the placeholder for future implementation. What this code does is it defines a function in Python. That function can take multiple parameters, parameter 1, 2, so on and so forth. Inside the function body, you can write code that you want to be executed when the function is called. The keyword pass is a placeholder that can be used when you want the function to do nothing for now, but you plan to implement it later. Now, let's look at the pseudocode implementation of it. Step 1. Use the def keyword followed by the function name and parenthesis. Means start with def followed by the function name and parenthesis. Step 2. Inside the parenthesis, specify any parameters that the function should accept. Means, inside the parenthesis, list any inputs the function should take. Step 3. Write the function body using the pass statement to indicate that this function is a placeholder and will be implemented later. Means, write the function body and use pass as a placeholder indicating it's not yet implemented. Step 4. Call the function by using its name followed by parenthesis, passing any required arguments if applicable. Means use the function's name followed by parenthesis to call it, passing any needed arguments. Step 5. Implement the actual code for the function later by replacing the pass statement with the appropriate code block. Means replace pass with the actual code when you are ready to implement the function's functionality. Finally, here is an example demonstrating pass statement in functions in which pass is used as a placeholder in function. The function check number takes a parameter num. Inside the function, it is checking if number is greater than 0. If yes, it prints it is positive number. Else, if number is 0, the pass statement is used as a placeholder indicating that this case will be implemented later. Otherwise, if the number is not greater than 0 or not equal to 0, it prints it is a negative number. When we call the function, check number of 53 checks for the condition and gives the output. Check number of 0 does nothing because the pass statement does nothing. Check number of minus 35 also checks for the appropriate conditions. If it is met, the output is given accordingly. Let's execute this and check. Positive number. Check number of 53 is greater than 0, hence the output is positive number. Check number of 0 does nothing because pass statement does nothing. Check number of minus 35 is less than 0, therefore the output is negative number. This is all about today's lecture. See you in the next lecture. Thank you.